doing very well by every measure. We're having probably the greatest economy that we've had anywhere, anytime.
Farmers are feeling the effects of retaliatory tariffs from China. But President Trump is not backing down. Earlier today, he praised the U.S.
Having a little squabble with China because we've been treated very unfairly for many, many decades, for actually a long time.
Imagine watching $27 billion vanish into thin air. Well, that's exactly what just happened to U.S. farmers. Within 2 short months, fields of soybeans and pork barrels are literally going unsold, left to rot. But guess what? It wasn't a drought. It wasn't a pandemic. It was China. Stick around to see how Beijing pulled off the ultimate trade ambush and why Washington never saw it coming. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video. Let's say you're a farmer and your biggest customer, the one buying more than half your crops, suddenly stops calling. Not because they found a better deal, but because they're slamming the door shut on you completely. That's exactly what American farmers went through with China, except instead of a polite breakup text, they got massive tariffs and import bans. The U.S.-China agricultural trade relationship wasn't just big, it was massive. Chinese buyers were the leading customers for American soybeans, pork, and sorghum. For years, this dynamic powered U.S. agricultural exports, with billions flowing across the Pacific. But this dependence? As farmers would quickly learn, it wasn't just a blessing. It was a ticking time bomb. When China pulled the plug, it wasn't subtle. Retaliatory tariffs hit like a sledgehammer. American soybeans, taxed by 25%, wheat and pork, blocked entirely in some cases. On top of that, Chinese officials revoked key import licenses, effectively cutting the U.S. off at the knees.
So, Ryan, I understand you farm hogs, corn, and soybeans. So how are the tariffs impacting you?
Especially for soybeans, on the China tariffs, we've seen it have a definite dramatic impact. 6th year of declining farm income. So while the general economy may be plugging along, the farm economy was just not positioned to withstand this.
Farmers suddenly found themselves staring at mountains of crops with nowhere to send them. This wasn't just a little bump in the road. It felt like driving full speed into a brick wall. Take sorghum as an example. Within a couple of months, U.S. sorghum exports to China dropped by 95%. Imagine betting your whole year's income on one harvest, only to watch it sit and spoil. Talk about a stress stream. And it wasn't just the farms that were impacted, it was the whole supply chain. Grain elevators, where crops are stored before shipping, sat nearly empty. Export terminals went quiet. The ripples spread fast. Shipping companies began losing business, small-town economies tied to agriculture dried up, and farmers saw bills piling up faster than they could open them. China wasn't retaliating randomly here either. This was a calculated strike. Hit the American agricultural sector, knowing it would ripple through the U.S. economy and hurt rural voters, many of whom backed the administration launching tariffs on Chinese goods. Oh, and China. They didn't just stop buying, they found new friends in the trade playground. Brazil started flooding China with soybeans, and Argentina stepped in with meat exports. The U.S. lost the game while Brazil and Argentina collected the spoils. Picture this. Washington throws a punch aimed at China, but instead, it lands squarely on U.S. farmers. And hard.
A retaliatory move in the wake of pending U.S. tariffs on Chinese aluminum and steel that could further impact Halpin's bottom line.
The equipment's expensive, land's expensive, and it costs a lot of money to put the crop in the ground.
Now there is the threat of Chinese tariffs on U.S. soybeans. And there are reports that buyers in China, the world's top consumer of soybeans, have stopped purchasing supplies from the U.S.
The Trump administration, on March 4, 2025, stood at the podium with its usual flair, unveiling a 25% tariff on Chinese steel and aluminum. The move was part of the America First policy, dressed up as a patriotic attempt to protect American industries. But here's the thing. While Washington was focused on steel beams and aluminum sheets, Beijing was already plotting revenge, and boy, did it come fast. Within 48 hours, China clapped back with a calculated counterpunch. They hit the heart of rural America, slapping tariffs on $21 billion worth of U.S. agricultural goods. Soybeans? A painful 34% tariff. Wheat? Same story. Pork? Better forget about it. And that wasn't all. They swiftly revoked key import licenses for major U.S. grain exporters, putting an abrupt end to business as usual. For American farmers, it felt like getting blindsided in an alley, only the alley was a global trade market, and the loss was billions of dollars.
It's about 63% of the total world export of soybeans, and is the second largest export market for U.S. grain products.
The soybean market is such a volatile part of the ag economy, and China's such a big player. We need China should come back, and somebody will pick up the slack. If China's buying from another country, somebody else is going to be looking for our soybeans.
The U.S. government had made a massive miscalculation. The thinking in Washington? Surely China needed American farm goods more than the other way around. Wrong. Unbeknownst to most, China had spent years nurturing relationships with countries like Brazil and Argentina. When the trade war hit, Brazil practically sprinted into action, ramping up soybean production and sending shiploads to China faster than you could say Missouri River. Argentina followed suit with meat exports. Meanwhile, American farmers were left standing in empty fields, watching the competition cash big international checks. And it didn't stop there. The ripple effect extended worldwide. Loyal buyers of U.S. wheat, like South Korea and the Philippines, saw the trade chaos and jumped to more reliable suppliers. Even if it cost more, the priority was stability. Making things worse, the World Trade Organization ruled that the U.S. tariffs violated global trade rules, essentially giving Washington a diplomatic slap on the wrist. The trade war wasn't just costly, it was embarrassing. So as farmers were losing billions, the real question became, could the damage ever be undone? The U.S. took a gamble with its America First trade strategy, but instead of chips, it was farmers laying everything on the table and losing. China's retaliation exposed just how fragile the system was, taking billions off the table and showing the disastrous cost of placing all bets on a single trade market. Control over the global food supply doesn't just sound like something out of a dystopian novel. It's shaping up to be the next big battlefield. Can the U.S. recover, rebuild trust, and diversify its export markets? Or will another misstep leave farmers caught in the crossfire yet again?